Right, he steps in a single door. Got his ass with my 20 lashes, like he do with a Singapore. So I'ma pull a fucking Jeffrey Dahmer. Now he's suicidal, just like Nirvana. Tick tock, tock, tick tock, tick. Dr. Dre and Ice Cube on some murder shit. Keeping niggas in order, making their life shorter, ready to slaughter. Cause for me, a life break with the water over time. Mushrooms got my mind hallucinating. Ain't no debating. I'm creating that escape route to be out without a doubt. Scott free, so don't even think about trying to stop me. Cause I can't wait, I'm out the gate. On the gorilla, a thriller from a natural born killer. They call me Dada. 6 million ways for murder. Choose one. Lose one soul. Body burn cold.
Rocken Larry Locken here with the What's Your Opinion Show channel. Today I'm going to do a little bit of a talk about, well, actually the last 2 weeks. It seemed like the last 2 years, but of course it was another banner 2 weeks for Donald Trump, and we're only at Tuesday of this week. I'd like to talk about, what I'm going to lead into is talk about his meeting he had yesterday with Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, the only white guy with a jerry curl. And it's actually probably one of the only bad jerry curls I've ever seen. He had a meeting with Rand Paul concerning the intelligence rights of, former security, like former FBI directors, former CIA directors, former NSA directors, yada, yada, yada. See, because unless they're terminated from their position, they have lifetime top security clearance. And the reason that is so they can be used as mentors to the current director and directors after that. It's not for them to go on TV and reveal secrets like the paranoid, fake fucking Fox News and Alex Jones would like you to believe. Maybe there are some limits that could be put on it, like a couple, like say 20 years or whatever, but I'm going to get to that in a minute because I got a lot to say about that shit. But starting about almost 2 weeks ago now, Trump made his rounds around Europe visiting with our NATO allies and really hit it big over there. I know they were really impressed, like they always are. Basically what his main gripe and bitch to everybody was is that same thing, the same old thing. They're not paying their fair share. For NATO, we've helped defend them against the, against the big bad Russians for so many years, and it's time for them to pay up, according to Trump. Well, they do their part too. The Brits, the French have quite a fighting force. Okay. So we've got quite a few allies in the European Union, actually, that have some serious weaponry and nuclear power themselves. The only reason that, the Republicans and Trump, people like that at the top, are getting pissed off is because these countries, while they're willing to help us at sea and help us keep, like, peace on borders, they're not willing to stay involved in all these bullshit other little things we've got going on over there that the media never talks about. The 8 countries that we're currently bombing right now, most of them are in Africa, from what I understand. So they just don't want to be involved in that. They're fine with having sea protection, making sure that we've got our ocean borders secured and things of that nature. They're just sick of fighting these wars with us, and that's what's draining the money. It's not really the maintenance of having these big aircraft carriers and whatnot over there, and small little border bases for training purposes with allied countries. That's not what's wasting all the money. What's wasting all the money is us and these continuous campaigns and continuous war machine efforts that we go after. And we're not losing any money on it, people. Please believe me. Contractors are making buku bucks. The military doesn't cook their own food usually anymore, so that's contracted out. Medical supplies are contracted out. Weapons are contracted out. Everything you can imagine, the vehicles are contracted out. Okay, so some big, wealthy baron somewhere in the United States or somewhere in another country is getting these deals to keep producing these things, okay? So it's not like, and Europe has always been there for us too when we've needed them, okay? So for Trump to go over there with his arrogant ass and sit there and tell Merkel and Macron and people like that he, you know, they owe him, or they owe the United States, he might use the word him, that they owe the United States, you know, billions of dollars, which is a bunch of bullshit. Okay, they're just evolving and don't want to have these continuous wars, which, you know what, I'm very anti-war. I have no problem, though, with one thing. I have no problem with keeping Russia hemmed in. Okay, they have a natural port out of there down through the Mediterranean. And that's like their only natural port they can get through without going through NATO blockades and things of that nature, all right? You know, because the only resource they have up there, they have a lot of oil, but they've got a lot of brilliant people too, so they should start making things. But I'm totally not for letting, you know, I'm not for letting Russia go any much further out of their borders than they need to. And sorry, that's just the way I feel about them. I've studied the Cold War for over 35 years. I've studied the Russians. We're no angels, but I know exactly how they work and like to do things. They're very manipulative. I would probably have to say that if I were to rank the top 2 spy countries in the world, number 1, Russia, number 2, the United States. The Russians have a way of doing it without, they just don't give a fuck, period. Okay, not that our agents give a fuck at all either, but they do not give a fuck, period. They will do anything to get what they need to get. They'll appeal to any kind of, they'll look into your life history, they'll appeal to your likes, what you may like sexually, what you might like drug-wise, if you like money, if you like real estate, if you like being flattered. And they're very good at doing it. Well, to some people with that accent, I don't know. I hear that accent and I kind of, yeah, it's nice, but I wouldn't, you know, it makes me think back to air raid drills and things like that and being worried about, you know, being nuked by them. And I don't trust Putin. We've been through this a million times. I don't trust him, and I'm not going to stop talking about Russia because I know what I'm talking about with Russia. Putin is a former lieutenant colonel in the KGB. Most of the other leaders before him were just kind of, you know, regular, typical oligarchs that worked their way through their house or their government or whatever. He was actually in the military for a long time, so this guy is no angel, and a Russian-U.S. alliance against the rest of the world is not the way we want to go. And leave it, you know, and I'm hoping that Trump shuts his fucking mouth about Iran too, because Iran doesn't want a nuclear war, and we don't want a war with them. We do not want to get bogged down over there. You think Iraq was trouble? We will absolutely, I don't even care if we had the allies with us, we would get our asses kicked on the ground in Iran. We've never been in there. We don't know the terrain. Their military might makes Iraq look like a speck of sand. Okay, so we don't want to go there, and neither does Iran. Iran doesn't want to nuke anybody. Even if Iran did, let's say Iran had a nuke or two, what are they going to do? Do you think they're that stupid that they want to end their lives by nuking Israel or nuking somebody else? Because they know in retaliation they'd be blown to smithereens. And think about this too. If they were really that crazy, if Iran and countries like that were really that crazy and wanted to blow up Israel and blow up the U.S. and do all that, right, they would have already, then you would have already seen, you'd see suicide bombers in the U.S. on a massive scale. You'd see them in other Western countries on a mass scale. Yes, I know people are going to say, well, we've had suicide bombers. A lot of them have been in Israel. And, you know, Palestinian people that are sick of being occupied and kept in a cage and not being able to have the same opportunities as the people that stole their land from them. But other than that, you don't see this shit. And if they were really that demonic, that's what they would be doing. You know what I mean? So they're not going to take their one little slingshot rock and throw it at somebody that's got an arsenal of machine guns. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. So he makes an ass of himself, looks like a fool completely to everybody in the European Union. Was asked about Brexit, doesn't even know what Brexit is, doesn't even know what that is. That was that big thing that he had. He wanted to replace the euro with, was the Brexit or whatever, and he can't even, you know, he couldn't even explain it right. So he gets to meeting with Putin. Okay. Really, anybody that has half a brain, I say that, and I don't mean to be insulted when I say that, but if you were to watch their joint press conference, Putin and Trump's joint press conference, with it on mute, you would get just about the same vibe that you got if you were to have the volume on. But the volume on, let's see, one Russian reporter was allowed to ask 2 questions, then an American reporter was allowed to ask 2 questions. So, and I don't think too often that Putin is ever really questioned by a reporter that's not in fear and not totally kissing his ass and, oh gee, Mr. Putin, your stone cold killer blue eyes and your balding head look really wonderful today. I don't think that that's ever happened, you know, that a reporter hasn't had to say that without, you know, unless they wanted to fear for their life. But the reporter that had from the U.S. who had actually asked him a question said that it was like looking into the eyes of a crazy man, looking right back at him. I mean, he wasn't happy with the questions he was being asked about these 12 people, because it just so happened on that same day, Robert Mueller indicted another 12 GRU officers. Well, I call them the KGB. It's the same thing. You know, the Soviet Union just changed flags, and when they became Russia, basically renamed a few things, but indicted another 12 GRU agents, including a lady who's been over here for a while, and she's in custody right now. She was having sex with different political people in the Republican Party high up for favors, to do her schoolwork for her as she was going to college here, well, for all kinds of things, you know. So that's going on, and so this is the real kicker of that whole meeting between Putin and Trump. Putin had said that, well, this isn't the kicker yet. Putin had said that, you know, in 2013 during that Miss Moscow pageant when Trump was over there, he said, you know, I didn't even at the time, because he was just another rich American billionaire, I had no idea he was even in Moscow. And then I looked over at Trump. His face was 50 shades of red, but getting relieved, and even his hair looked out of line. Okay. And Trump is so stupid that he even congratulated, in the times we're in, yeah, he congratulated Russia on a great World Cup, who got beat in the quarters, which is okay, but then France won on their soil. So that was kind of odd. Putin didn't look too thrilled by that. But then, like everybody on both sides of the aisle and all the intelligence agencies had asked Trump to do, to ask Putin about those 12 Russians that were indicted, and that if we could question them or have them detained and brought back to the U.S. Well, Putin decided to make a counteroffer and say that sure, we'll do that if we can interview. They wanted to interview a former ambassador, an American that was an ambassador over there in Russia, and they wanted to interview a few other people that worked over there, that lived in America. One of them, whose lawyer was a Russian who was a Putin opponent and was jailed over there. And yeah, well, he didn't come out alive, like a lot of people. He didn't come out alive. So they thought that was Trump thought that was a wonderful idea, that we would do an exchange program, and Mueller's guys could interview those 12, and Putin, we could bring our people, bound them up, that Putin wants to talk to, and drop them off in Russia to never be seen again. and to be interviewed. And that just, everybody went crazy. The press, the Senate voted. I was talking about how hard it is to get a 2/3 majority in the Senate vote, but the Senate voted 98-0 with 2 votes abstaining. Probably one was McCain in the hospital. 98-0 to say, no, yeah, you're not going to consider that. That's a crazy idea. And so Trump walked that back, and took his heat during the weekend. And of course, I think he tweeted at the NFL again to take some of the heat off of him. But then yesterday, Rand Paul, and if you don't know who this guy is, this guy's a real prize. His father's a real prize too, Ron Paul. They're both they're both libertarians that caucus with the Republican Party. Okay, but anyway, Rand Paul, who, by the way, he's the one who just got, about 6 months ago, his neighbor came over while he was mowing the lawn and beat the shit out of him and hurt his ribs. And if that goes on in a wealthy neighborhood like where Rand Paul must live, I mean, you're pissing some people off. So Rand Paul's great idea was that since all these former intelligence heads, that have since retired, have top security clearance still, that it should all be completely revoked out of the fear that they may try to find something on Trump and use it on it. If they were going to do that, and if they are going to do that, they already have figured it out and know it and given the info to Miller. Any one of these guys could get a hold of Trump's tax returns in a second. Okay, and we've been talking about it for 1.5 years, 2 years. So that's a stupid idea. And among the people that Rand Paul suggested, and then that Trump tweeted out and suggested that they look at pulling the security clearance from, was 2 people that had already had their shit revoked because they were fired: Andrew McCabe and James Comey. The rest of them, like James Clapper, former head of national intelligence, and former FBI or former CIA director John Brennan, they still have a top security clearance, and they've kept things pretty much close to the tilt. These people all have their own careers. They're not depending on this for money, still having top security clearance. All right. They've already got pensions that are close to 100,000, if not more. Plus, they all have their own careers, their own businesses, their own gigs. The reason why they allowed top officials who retire, like heads of the department, to keep that clearance is because in case their expertise is needed, in case somebody coming alongside of them or coming up after them has a question. It's kind of like a mentor role. You know what I mean? So, and then I got to thinking last night, well, maybe you could put some kind of a limit on it. But no, you really couldn't, because then, you could put a limit on it like, okay, well, that can only go for the next 1 or 2 directors after that person. And then that person has to get rid of their security clearance. But if you did that, that would set up a scenario, if we get another fucking like Trump ever, that'll just fire those 2 people for some reason, just any reason, like Trump will make up and use. So I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe 20 years, but most of these people are dead 20, 30 years after they retire. So it's really a non-issue. But yeah, Rand Paul just tries to make himself relevant. He thinks that one day he's going to be the big third-party president. You know what I mean? And there really isn't, behind, even though they talk of the game, there really isn't 2 bigger shills out there besides Trump for the Russians than Jill Stein of the Green Party, who thinks more in the lines of the Democrat Party, but all they really do is ever obstruct the Democrat Party. The Libertarians kind of, not so much with the Republicans. They disagree with them on a few things, but not too many. And Rand Paul, if you've never listened to this guy, you got to listen to him. Every time he says he's going to vote against Trump, he's not going to stand for this, he's not going to vote for this bill, he's got a real problem with it, he ends up, after having his say and bitching and whining and moaning, he ends up caving in and voting anyway. But he was so concerned that he had to get an emergency White House meeting with Trump to let him know this, that that other partisans should have their security clearance, like taken away from them. Partisans, that means people that come, see, these people all come on TV and are interviewed, whether they're pro-Trump, anti-Trump, any former intelligence worker, agency, even lower level ones come on the networks and talk. We all know that shit, okay? What he's afraid of, or Rand Paul, and now Trump is pissed off that these people would be coming on TV and saying negative stuff about Trump. They don't give away any secrets, but they talk about the Trump, it's not wise for him to cozy up to Putin like he's doing. It's not wise for him to be so secretive and not have even his cabinet members in on things that he's doing, and changing his mind 4 times a week. So that is why right there. It's not because these guys are fucking hacks and these, which some of them are. You get deep in this, the CIA, FBI. I'm the last guy you'll find supporting these people, but I'll support them over Trump or Putin any day. I'm telling you that right now. I mean, that ought to be apparent to anybody. The man behind the curtain is really in front of the curtain, folks. It's not like that. It used to be. Everything's coming to the lights come into the front. You can see Putin and Trump in front of the curtain instead of behind it. So then, of course, Sarah Husselbuck Sandbags, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I like to call. What a woman! What a woman! I feel so just blessed for her 3 daughters to grow up with her, and her poor husband, but he probably knew what he was getting into. But she came on there and was doing the press conference and telling these reporters that, after that they agreed with Rand Paul's initial tweet before the meeting, and that they think that it's detrimental to the country that people could be going on TV and giving their opinions. Although if these people were going, I guarantee you, if these people were going on TV and slamming Obama, slamming Clinton, even slamming the Bushes a little, maybe, they would be invited to a White House dinner, praised. Trump would be tweeting about them all goddamn day long. Okay? So when somebody thinks of this story, some initial lame American that doesn't pay attention to the news, which is most, will say, God, yeah, why in the hell should they get to keep their top security clearance when they're out? Why should they get to keep it? Well, for the point that I just pointed out, so they can be a mentor and offer, advice, and maybe an issue comes up that the bureau or that particular agency needs some help with down the road and needs some expertise. I mean, these people already know everything. They already know everything. This list of people that he wants to get rid of, retired General Michael Hayden, former director of the CIA, former security advisor, national security advisor Susan Rice. Okay, he wants to pull their security clearances because they've been critical of him on TV. It's ridiculous. And of course, Comey and McCabe, who have already had theirs because they were terminated. All right, they didn't retire; they were terminated. And that's another shitty thing Trump did. Trump terminated McCabe 2 days before he was supposed to retire, like 36 hours before he was going to retire to collect his pension. So, James Clapper, former National Intelligence Director, he did respond back, but it's just that there's a procedure to go through to remove somebody's clearance and blah blah blah, and cutting off that access over a disagreement would set a terrible precedent. Yeah, it would. One of the worst he's set so far, and he set 1 million of them. Okay. And this is all too to distract from, because, and I think the White House probably did leak this, but it really doesn't matter. One tape came out. Michael Cohen, it has been revealed that Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer still, soon to be former lawyer probably, Michael Cohen, does have a tape of him and Trump discussing paying off, not Stormy Daniels, but Karen McDougal, paying her off several months before the election. So, and how to do it. And Trump suggested to do it in a check instead of cash. And, you know, then you had Giuliani on TV saying that that was a wise move to say that instead of cash. So I don't know what the hell that is. But then it came out that there's 12 more that I don't think they've released them yet, but there's 12 more that have been officially announced that are out there. So maybe they have been released at this time. I'm just kind of catching up on the news of the day. But lawyer Michael Avenatti, who's got a 99 success rate over the last 8 or 9 months on his predictions, claims that there's a lot more out there, and he knows it for a fact, and a lot of them have Trump's voice on them, talking about paying these people off, you know, how to handle certain situations, and this is all going on during the campaign, keep in mind. So what's probably going to end up happening is Michael Cohen's going to end up flipping. And actually, it's funny, Michael Avenatti is offering to even represent him if he even, and he got it. Well, Michael Cohen got a new lawyer, Lanny Davis, who's used to work for the Clintons, but Avenatti even offered his services if Cohen is willing to turn state's evidence and completely come clean with all this and release the tapes himself. I noticed, you know, Alan Douchebag, Alan Dershowitz is his name. He's an attorney. He's been a law professor at Harvard or somewhere for 30 years. He's another guy that used to have it kind of together, but, you know, he's losing his marbles, and him and Avenatti kind of got into it on TV yesterday, and, you know, and Dershowitz had nothing. Dershowitz is like, I know that one tape was leaked, but how do you know there's other tapes? How do you know? How do you know? How do you know this? How could you possibly legally know this? And Avenatti said, you know, Alan, first of all, that's none of your business. Second of all, it's not from anybody in Mueller's team. It's not from anybody in law enforcement. It's not from anybody from the government, or from, you know, the DOJ, the Department of Justice. So it doesn't really matter where he got it. Once it's leaked to the press, you know, somebody from there could have gave it to the press, and then the press could have gave it to Avenatti. Or the chances are Avenatti has known this shit already for over a year, because he's been in litigation against Cohen because of his client, Stormy Daniels. All over $130,000. All over $130,000 paid to her 2 weeks to shut her up before the election. You know, and he's got a history of doing this with women. I mean, and if you don't believe it, there's the McDougal story, there's her story, there's the fact that he's the only president married 3 times. You know, I'm not judging, but he got 3 babies' mamas. I mean, generally, you don't lead a life like that when you become president, okay? And that's not, you know, and then people might say, well, just shows he's a normal guy. Heck, he eats ketchup on his steak. No, it's because he was a spoiled little bitch growing up, okay? That's what he was. He was a spoiled little bitch that liked what he liked and got what he got. And his mom, I don't think, could really stand him, but he was daddy's little boy, and daddy bailed him out of this and that and everything else. And, you know, and when daddy died, he turned to the Russians, or, excuse me, or his father's already been in bed with the Russians, had already been in bed with the Russians since the 50s probably. But if not, it started around 2000, and they may have been grooming him sooner. I mean, both the sons have admitted to it years ago in interviews, like 8 years ago in interviews, that, boy, we sure get a lot of Russian money coming in for these golf courses. But, you know, the way I see it, Trump, there's a lot of shit out there that could end up forcing him to have to resign. That's the only way. He's either going to resign, he's going out in a body bag, and I'm not encouraging that, or if we try to impeach him, it's just it'll take way too long, unless it's done bam, 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 unless they have just such overwhelming evidence that would make Watergate look like nothing that they had on Nixon. Okay, it would, and there is a lot there, but if it's just kind of so-so and we do get a Democratic Congress and we try to impeach him, it'll take the only good it's going to do. The only good that it's going to do is if he were to win a second term. Okay. And then if this, and then can you imagine 2/3 of the Senate, though, after he just won a second term, voting to kick him out? I don't think so, but it's not going to affect the first term because I broke it down in the way the Clinton trial went and how long that took and the impeachment in the Senate. And Clinton cooperated a little bit towards the end, so his was shorter. This would take till about, let's say that this would probably go down if he was actually impeached and this miracle happening, was kicked out of office. It would probably go down about 2 months to the day when he was going to leave office if he lost the election anyway. So what we probably would end up with is Mike Pence as president for 2 months, or maybe it gets delayed and set back a little bit till after the after the first of the year when the new House, Senate, and House take over in 2000, because they always re-adjourn like on the 3rd or that first week in January, whereas the president doesn't start his new term or leave office till the 20th or the 21st, either one of those 2 dates. I believe it's the 21st always, but sometimes I think it's the 20th, but usually it's the 21st. So, and if that happens, I mean, they're not going to, they're not going to get that. They're not going to, I can't see them wasting the time to go through the rigmarole to get him out of there for 2 weeks. But you never know. These are all things that are going down. We have no idea what's going on. Mueller is a year ahead of everybody. Trump is trying to push through this Supreme Court nominee, this Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who is definitely not pro. He's definitely not pro-women. He's definitely anti-choice. He actually wrote a dissenting article one time. See, during the Supreme Court, or during the Nixon Watergate case, the Supreme Court, because they only had 8 members at the time instead of 9, for some reason, 8. They voted 8-0, 8-0 to make Nixon turn over those tapes. Okay, that won't happen with this Supreme Court. That they'll vote. It'll be a 5-4 split probably. I would have to think. Maybe some of the others will have a conscience, but I doubt it. So, and Kavanaugh wrote that was just that Kavanaugh's thought is and thesis is the president should not be bothered with anything criminal, period, whatsoever. His tune was different when Bill Clinton was in office, but now he's saying he's learned from that, and and now that sometimes something 30 times worse has been done on so many levels, he doesn't find that Trump should be bothered about this kind of thing. And it would set a bad precedent to mess with him while he's in office. And he probably thinks that when he leaves office, he should just ride off into the sunset. So, but we'll see how it goes. It should be interesting. He's going to try to get that in before the midterm elections or right after the midterm elections, because you got to understand, after the midterm election, there's still about 8 weeks of the current Congress. Okay, so they would still have that 8 weeks to vote Kavanaugh through. All right, so they would win on November 9th, but they wouldn't take over until like that first week of January. So they could still do it. So that's what kind of alarms me, is when we get to January, get through that. If we could win Congress or win the House, maybe win the Senate, and then 2019, we'll just go from there and see what happens. But every day shit's getting crazier, people. Just be aware. I don't like to make people paranoid. I mean, it's like Obama was joking at some event yesterday that he didn't even mention Trump by name, but he's all it's become the norm now for politicians to lie. And then Obama laughed and said, well, all politicians, we all lie. But I mean, come on, man. I mean, there's a difference between a lie and getting caught, or Obama's like, there's a difference between a lie and getting caught and say, oh, okay. And instead of saying, oh well, and just keep doing it like Trump does. But, we'll see how this goes. We really don't have a lot of power right now except to vote. That's it. Either that or civil war, people. I mean, that's the kind of situation that we're in right now. And it's getting to be a bunch of bullshit. Like I said, one day maybe America will be awakened. I just hope at that point we're not saddled another 20 years or 25 years with all these not unelectable, they're non-electable positions. They're lifetime positions, these Justice Department positions or judge positions in different in different districts across the country. And in the Supreme Court, it's forever. It's for, like I said, until you are no longer, until you're in a coma, and then you're just out temporarily until you actually are declared dead. So, I mean, there's no leaving the Supreme Court. I mean, you can get out of the mafia 5 times easier. Okay, well, you can retire, but you can't get somebody out of the Supreme Court. Only the justices themselves could get somebody out of there, and it takes a very overwhelming vote. I think more than one dissent, and they can't do it. So get out there and vote. Vote your conscience, but vote your mind too. Understand what we're up against. It's just like this last election. Gary Johnson or Jill Stein were not going to win the election. They'll show back up again, or at least old Jill come back down off the hill, in 2020 probably, and start in with her bullshit again while the Green Party isn't doing really anything on the grassroots level. So, and the Libertarian Party is just an obstructionist party, Rand Paul, people like that, people like his big-eared, goofy dad, Ron. They're both ophthalmologists. I'd love to have them both operate on each one of my eyes. Not. But, that's kind of all I had to say. And I wanted to give a shout out too, because I've been kind of missing connecting. And this is my fault. I've been missing connecting with Kenny due to work hours. And of course I had been sick. And the other night I kind of, was just so tired that I pretty much slept the whole day. So I wanted to apologize to Kenny for that, and give a shout out to Opinion with Facts, the main channel, as well as thank him for letting me do my thing and do our show here on the What's Your Opinion show. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we are on Instagram now. I've just got to make one little adjustment so I can post photos to it. That's it. Other than that, we're there. We're on Instagram. Like I said, you can find my 2 channels, Pleiadian Express Productions, Pleiadian Light Grid Project. They're on YouTube and all those other places except Instagram as well. So with that being said, Rocken Larry Locken. Oh, by the way, I'm going to see real quick if, let's see, I'm just going to see real quick if there was anybody like in the chat room, because I have a hard time with. Oh, hey, Baltimore East West, what's up? Shaybone, what the fuck is this, a portable AM radio playing? Yeah, man, my technology sucks, dude. Don't ever let it be said that some white people ain't ghetto. I know, brother, it sucks. But I'll have a better cell phone here soon. I'll also have a tablet that I can use. I'll have the big setup, the big hookup like Kenny's got down in the KJ Studios down there in Baltimore East West. Hey, yeah, hello from clear out on the West Coast. I'm actually through the trees right now. I can see the Pacific Ocean, so I'm looking at the other ocean. I'm right in the middle of the West Coast in Oregon, between the that state nobody knows of, between Washington and California. So with that being said, yeah, sorry, brother. Sorry, Shay, that it sounded like I'm on a portable AM radio. I do apologize for that. And when I'm on Google Hangout, it's hard to, I forgot to look over at the chat section here on the YouTube channel. So I'm getting this down. I'm figuring it out. It's been a long time since I've done this on a nightly, regularly basis. So With that being said, I'm going to quit rambling on and get the fuck out of everybody's hair. And I appreciate everybody that took a second to listen. Thank you so much. Much love. And I know nobody here is old enough to remember the dating game, but I'm going to give everybody, like I always do, a big cosmic dating game kiss. Mwah. And we're out.